This presentation, titled Risk Assessment as a Gateway to Efficiency and Innovation, Building Enterprise Value by Identifying and Mitigating Risks, comes to us from Jeffrey Slotnick. Jeff is an internationally known senior enterprise risk consultant with more than 28 years of experience, peer recognized as a thought leader and a critical architect in homeland security. As an ISO credentialed lead auditor, Jeff is responsible for some of the latest advancements in all hazards of disaster resilience, organizational resilience management, ISO ANSI standards development, resiliency information management processes, enterprise security risk management, and quality management systems. He focuses on all facets of enterprise security risk management, including risk, vulnerability, and threat assessments, emergency response planning, business continuity planning, and physical security systems, master planning, design, and integration. Jeff has extensive experience in the public works and utility field with specific expertise in water, wastewater, dams, transportation infrastructure, light and heavy rail, supply chain, religious institutions, schools, data centers, and medical facilities. And with that, take it away, Jeff.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate the kind introduction. So good day wherever you're at in the world, and we're going to be having a good time together. We're going to be speaking about risk assessment as a gateway to efficiency and innovation. We've been doing risk assessment, in private sector for a little bit over 21 years. And one of the things that we've found is that risk assessment is our way of identifying problems. And as part of our risk assessment, with a quality management focus, we're also identifying many areas of improvement and efficiency and enabling our clients to innovate in that area. So a little bit about us. A lot of that was covered in the introduction, but a lot of my clients are C-suite clients. And that's where we're very comfortable, is assisting them in their strategy. And we'll speak about some of those proof points a little bit later today. We look at risk assessment as a core practice. It different from other items. There's many different kinds of assessors out there. And what we have found is that we need to treat risk assessment as we do any other business process. It needs to be treated with analytics. It needs to be business friendly so that we can identify risk and identify improvements that not only increase resilience, but improve the bottom line of the enterprise that we're dealing with. So what is the value of a quality risk assessment? It's not just going out and filling out some papers and taking photos and identifying different issues. It's about seeing risk assessment as the entry point for continuous improvement. And by doing a risk assessment and accomplishing a good risk assessment, what we're doing is ensuring the accomplishment of the enterprise strategy, which is really what this is about at the end of the day. So I know this is an older model from 31,000. We also have 2018 in here as well. But one of the things that people don't understand is that risk assessment really is a problem-solving process. We learned the problem-solving process back in high school. The first step of solving a problem is identifying the problem. And that's where risk assessment comes in. We have to be able to identify the problem before we can address solutions, before we can make recommendations, before we can identify inefficiencies. And we create a roadmap for success. It takes leadership and commitment. And really, through risk, we create value. The value is created in many different forms in the enterprise. But at the end of the day, when you look at a company, they're in business for a purpose. The entire focus of a risk assessment is to ensure that they can continue that purpose and continue to produce a profit or a service which is what they're engaged to do business-wise. It's our job to help them to identify the risks, analyze the risks, and evaluate them so that an appropriate risk treatment can be applied and the enterprise success continues. So we have to understand that there is value in risk. In order to understand the value in risk, we have to understand the impacts on risk. Now, these are just 4 impacts here that are listed. Impacts to people, impacts to finances, impacts to reputation, impacts to equipment. There are other impacts that are for different enterprises. For example, one enterprise we work with does a lot of research. So their intellectual property is a huge issue for them. So they wanted an impact to measure the impact on loss of intellectual property. And we measure loss, everything from low negligible, which is, has very little impact on the organization, to catastrophic, which is a showstopper. So let's take finances for an example, a financial impact. Those are generally a lot easier to understand. So my company makes $1 million a year. That's what we do. We're 1 million every year, and that's been our history. We produce very well. An impact of 500,000 would be a significant impact to us. An impact over $1 million would be catastrophic. So we can measure impact, and we can apply it directly to the enterprise. Where we find the value in risk, and we'll expand upon this as we get deeper into the presentation, is when we can close that gap between the impact of consequence and ensuring that that consequence doesn't occur, we are producing value. So a lot of times what we find is within enterprises, there's not a lot of leveraging of their ecosystem. They don't take existing data and repurpose it to communicate process improvement efforts, continuous compliance efforts, and proactive and predictive response to risks. And due to that, they have a lot of duplicative infrastructure and costs. And we have found that 20% of budget spend a lot of time is based on inefficiencies in people, processes, and tools. We recently worked with a client that had, they are a $25 million a year guard spend that had just grown over time. And when they engaged us to look at their guard force, which we identified the inefficiencies in a risk assessment, they gave us the follow-on project to assist them. We were able to recover $4.5 million by looking at new ways of doing business, restructuring some positions for different positions, and incorporating technology. In doing that, we were able to show a $4.5 million recovery. Now, of course, the software that they're going to have to install is going to cost $300,000. But if you look at the value of $4.5 million over the lifetime of the software, which is 6 to 8 years, you're talking about a significant amount of money. So that recovery and that business process made sense, and it was a mitigation that they chose to engage in. So we find a lot of cost and value hiding in different silos within the organization, and the inability for those silos to communicate. Sometimes instead of silos, I've been known to refer to them as cylinders of excellence, because they really do think that they have a beat on things. But when we can eliminate the information silos within the organization, we find that we can capitalize on things, because risk is shared. we use a model sometimes in training where we talk about a spill of chemical at a plant, and we give 3 different scenarios. One scenario is an operator that came in inebriated to work and ran the forks of a forklift into the tank and created a breach. Another was an attempted theft of chemical, and the third was an IT breach of the SCADA system. All 3 of those are different divisions and different silos within the organization. But at the end of the day, the enterprise had to deal with a chemical spill. So all risk is shared, and all risk is shared within the organization, and everybody has a contribution to eliminating risk. So as we discussed, a lot of our clients have us looking at security programs, and where do those inefficiencies reside? They reside in global security operation centers, in security force management, and physical security technologies. Global security operation centers, very interesting because you have a person sitting at a desk that is monitoring systems, and when somebody walks by, they see a person not engaged in doing something other than observing. So they have a tendency to load them down with ancillary tasks that eventually lead to them not monitoring the system and taking away from their core function. We have identified numerous inefficiencies in operation centers, and that's just one of them. Security force management, we've already talked about, and the issues around security force management. But another area that you look at is physical security technology. Everything operates today on the same IT backbone that all other systems operate. We have cameras, card readers, access control systems, visitor management systems. But when we look at these technologies, a lot of them can be integrated for better information, but a lot of them don't speak to each other. And they need to be integrated into a platform where there's a single pane of glass where they can be viewed. And when we look at those for clients, we look at the total cost of ownership, not just what it costs to own the software and the hardware, but what it costs to maintain it and take care of it. You would be surprised at the amount of professionals in the industry that will keep a physical security system for 8 to 10 years, but go into a panic if their iPhone is not the latest release. And when you look at that in those terms, we find a lot of companies that are operating an iPhone 4S system in an iPhone 12 world. And we try to assist them in seeing that and identify that through the risk assessment. So there's a lot of cost and value in various physical security silos. These are just a few that we're listing here. But at the end of the day, we produce a report, and reports need to be business friendly. Everybody needs to be able to understand the report. That report needs to be viewed by the CEO, the CFO, the CIO, the COO. All of these people speak the language of business. So it makes sense that the business model that we should use in producing our information on assessments should follow a business intelligence process. Business intelligence helps us to understand our business. It improves the decision-making process, gives us the ability to access and share information easily across business units. It enables real-time analysis, helps identify waste in the system, and reduces the risk of bottlenecks in processes. This is all quality management. Quality management based on business intelligence, data analytics, and informatics. Data analytics are used for success and for identifying and understanding your risk and the opportunities and risk that are available to you. We use analytics and informatics to capture risk assessment data. So this is a bit of a flow chart that I've created to show what a risk assessment looks like and how it is used. So we have the overarching enterprise strategy. We identify threat, vulnerability, and consequence. In identifying vulnerability, we evaluate physical security technology, the impacts and likelihoods that we discuss. That feeds forward into data analytics and data aggregation, which allows us to take a holistic view at enterprise risk. And although I know this is focused on security risk, we can also do the same with natural disasters and technological disasters that can impact an enterprise. Once we've identified enterprise risk, we have the ability to transform that into informatics and business intelligence, which is C-suite friendly for decisions. We develop mitigations or a risk register where we have strategy aligned to the risk mitigation. And with that, we're able to portray for the client, or the enterprise is able to portray for themselves, what their residual risk is. So we have the present state, the transitory state, and the to be state, which is very, very good when people can paint a picture of where they want to be and where the organization is going to. Of course, this all feeds back into the enterprise strategy, and the enterprise continues, but we don't stop with this. This is a continuous improvement process. Depends on what the risk assessment cycle is, whether it's every year, 2 years, or 3 years. When we engage in a process like this, it's not a one and done and walk away. It is a sticky, continuous improvement process. And on that cycle, let's just call it a 2-year cycle, when we come back to that assessment, we have the ability to pick up where we left off. And instead of reinventing the wheel, what we do is address what's changed since the last iteration, as opposed to a complete redo and a clean slate. Critical risk information, again, needs to be business friendly, and it needs to be portrayed through business intelligence tools. So this is just a quick snapshot that would be used in a presentation in the C-suite. We look at the assessment and the data points. We quantify, rank, and analyze the data, and then we portray the data for related business decisions. So right here, you see 4 panels. One is overall risk, one is threat, one is vulnerability. The other is a maturity model that deals with enterprise risk management. And although what you see here is a chart, these business intelligence charts have the ability to drill down. So in this case, where you see a 2 listed, if I wanted to know what those 2 risks were, I can double click on that, and it takes me right down to the specific risks and what they are and how they impact the enterprise. So reports need to be user defined. They need to be configurable reports that provides the end user with the information they need in a singular format. We need to be able to print reports or partial assessment reports, or have it strictly as an online capability. We need to be able to rapidly visualize the risk, the mitigation, and the residual risk, so that the enterprise can make good decisions and understand exactly where their investment in minimizing that impact is going to be. It needs to be real time. In other words, as we apply a mitigation from the risk register to a specific risk, we need to change that to the residual risk. That way we see a process of continuous improvement and how we're improving day to day. A shared understanding forms the basis for mutual decision making. You know, it's just like singing in a choir. If everybody's singing off a different sheet, then we don't end up with music, we end up with noise. in the world of risk, when we have a shared understanding of what the risk is, then we can form a basis for collective and collaborative decision making that benefits the enterprise and benefits enterprise health. So when we look at an ESRM or ERM business delivery model, we identify risk, threat, and vulnerability. We look at process optimization. We look at the intersection with business processes and how it impacts those business processes. And then we engage in a process of master planning or development of the risk register. This leads to road mapping, enterprise integrations, enterprise migrations, and accomplishment of enterprise risk management or enterprise security risk management. We're speaking about a platform for leadership. A lot of the, if you look at this graphic, this is pure quality management, starting with an organization that's at level 1. This is essentially a maturity model, level 1 being chaotic, level 5 being best in class, where we find a lot of our assessments. Most of the businesses we work with are solid 3s, with some areas falling into a 2 and some areas falling into a 4. But every one of them has the ability to achieve excellence and become a level 5 organization. So this is a model for leadership. And, what we find is security and risk as a strategic partner. We find the linkages between enterprise risk and the business unit. We find that collaboration between silos improves business process as an added benefit, that we have real-time situational awareness in the organization, and that real-time situational awareness allows us to make decisions rapidly to avoid or minimize the impact of risk, and serves as a strategic business plan and roadmap for improvement. So all metrics start with a baseline assessment of performance, both the risk program and resultant technologies. Security must bridge the relationship gap with line of business leaders. Security leadership involves cross-functional integration across all lines of business. This helps us to achieve performance management when we align the strategy of the various silos with the strategy of the business. This is just a little bit of information about who we are and what we do. And strategic goals for a good risk program are comprehensive analytical risk assessments, aligning security strategy with enterprise strategy, developing integrated technology solutions. Those lead to mitigation strategies and zero-based studies, as well as business continuity and crisis management planning. So that completes my presentation. I know we're a little bit early. We ran about 22 minutes, but Mike, I'd like to turn it back over to you at this time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeff Slotnick, for that look at risk assessment and enterprise value. And that concludes this presentation.